Hey, it's Christian Martin from digitalnomad.com and the Work From Anywhere podcast. And today we have a very special guest, a man who I've been wanting to interview for quite a while. And I think a lot of our audience is going to be interested to hear what he has to say today as well. Jamil Velji is here from Canada, and he is one of the head coaches in the Work From Anywhere Accelerator. He also runs a six-figure agency while fulfilling the role of head coach and doing about a dozen other things as far as I'm aware of, but I'm sure there's more. So I'm really curious to hear how Jamil does it all, and also go back to the beginning, see how he got to start and how one man has so much breadth of knowledge in this industry, because he just seems to be everywhere. So Jamil, thanks for being with us today.
Definitely appreciate you taking the time, having a chat.
Yeah, I'm super excited to get into your story. And I don't know the beginning of your journey in this industry. So I think I'm just going to take it way back, and let's just start at the beginning. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, for sure. So grew up actually like 2 minutes up the road from where I live right now. circle right back on that. But in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And my background for the longest time was just in tech and computers, and I mean, like being like a tech support type person. So somehow or another, at one point, I decided to join an agency as like an intern type program because it sounded really cool. And it sounded like a lot of what I'd seen online. Because even at that time, this was must have been a good like 15 years ago. You'd still see like make money online ads all over the place, and it was always like I'd love to do that. Maybe that works. Maybe that doesn't. And this sounded like a good starting point with basically just how they laid it off. Little did I know it basically just ended up being managing folks' Facebook pages. That was the starting point. But that kind of grew into an obsessive knowledge and obsessive need to just learn more about social media, because I was looking at it and saying, like, people are paying this much money to have someone just like write a post on Facebook. Like, I mean, 4 times a week, you're still talking about 2 or 3 minutes of time. And meanwhile, they're exchanging it for $500, $1,000, $2,000 a month sometimes. That was just crazy to me. And I thought it was just for the longest time, in the first couple of weeks I was there, I was like, this is such a big scam. These guys are going to get shut down. And then as they started introducing me to more companies that they were working with, realized that they were actually a tiny fish in this massive pool where people, in some cases, were charging hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for social media strategy. And really what that strategy was just saying, here's this template, this little PDF of the same thing we tell everybody, and pay $100,000 for this 10-page document.
Yeah, that's what's kind of crazy about this industry, is so many people that are new to it, they come in and they say, like, this can't be real. This isn't real. And it's like, yeah, dude, there's billions of dollars flowing through this industry every single year. Like, it's real, believe it or not. It's happening.
And it's not all Fiverr gigs.
Yeah,
it's not all $5 Fiverr gigs.
Yeah, but before we jump into that, I want to bring it back before we get too far ahead of ourselves. So, like, you graduated from high school in your hometown, and then like what happened next?
Yeah, so I actually went to school to be a doctor. And for the life of me, I hated it with a passion. I thought it was going to be all about, I thought, you get to university and you have this idea, you want to be a doctor or whatever, and you dive right into learning that. And it's like, no. Everybody goes through the same, like 2, 3, 4 years of school beforehand. And it's all garbage. I mean, it's all stuff you're never going to use in life. Even, my brother's a doctor now. He doesn't use half that stuff. You don't need to know like quadrilaterals to be a doctor. Yeah. Maybe if you're a pharmacist or something, who knows? But all of that stuff, I got really fed up with it, because I was like, I don't want to read this. Like, this isn't interesting. And I thought for the longest time, honestly, I had a thought that I was just like really stupid, because I was like, how are all these other people just sitting in front of a textbook and just learning and getting good grades and stuff? And I'd look at it, I'd be like, this is dry, this is crap. Like, why do I need to learn this? And I couldn't consume any of it.
Yeah, so it was maybe just like too slow for you, even not moving quick enough.
Yeah, I think it's pure interest. And I kind of realized that a lot more now when I look back at how I consumed marketing content and stuff that's basically of interest. And I just went crazy on it, just hours and hours and hours in front of a computer reading, because I was like, this is amazing, this is awesome, I want to learn more. Obviously that wasn't the right fit. So after a year, then I was like, I got to do something else. And so my background very heavy in tech and using computers and building computers and things. And I was like, I'll go into IT. Like, why not? That's close enough. They make decent money. And at that point, that's what I was just like, I was just trying to figure out, how do I make some form of income? Because none of this stuff is interesting to me. Let's just figure out the money side. And that's when I went into IT. It was a good intro, but again, very generic. Like, everything was generalized because none of it was for a specific path and things. It was like, you go in and then there's 1,000 different jobs that you can get, but until you're like 3 years in, you don't specialize.
So this was in university again. You're kind of getting a general education in IT.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, they went through, basics of programming a little bit, then a little bit of like building computers. And I honestly, after like 2 years, I got really, really bored. And I just coasted by as much as I could on like 2% above passing. Just got to the point of graduating there while honestly just wasting time when I look back at it. But that was what they had a co-op program because it is IT, it's hands-on. You got to learn by actually doing. And at that point, I was looking at what they had, and that's when I came across the first agency I joined as the intern. I came across their post. They were just looking for someone, and I came across it in the computer section because they thought it was like a technical position.
Okay.
But I came across it, and I was like, this sounds more interesting.
Do you remember what year this was?
I want to say it was like 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
Like by that point, in all the wasted time that I had at university, I definitely messed with some stuff online. I bought some like $5 ebooks on how to sell ebooks and, all of that type of stuff. And looking at that compared to like the IT side, when that post came up for some reason, I was just like, this sounds good. This sounds like a fit. And that's why I joined them. And that's honestly where I probably learned the good foundation of like everything in the online space can be learned, and it just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of effort. Because when I came in there, like I knew nothing. Like I understood Facebook because I had Facebook, but I mean, managing people's pages and copywriting and understanding like the psychographics of a customer, which they love to use that word. I don't think anybody at the company knew what that word meant.
Yeah.
But understanding like that's an element, all that I learned while I was just there, and I was just like, great, I'm helping them with managing these clients. But then when I'm done for the day, what do I do? Right? Like,
yeah,
everybody thinks you finish work and you go play video games or whatever. And I was like, I'd finish work and I'd be like, well, I don't want to do any of that stuff. Like, this is really interesting. Let me learn more. And I at that point, I don't even know, I was probably spending upwards of like 100 hours a week between them and then just research.
Yeah. So it peaked. You sounds like you became very curious. What do you think it is about? Well, one, did you know what marketing was at all going into that position, or you more just kind of thought it was going to be tech stuff? And two, like if marketing is what made you so curious, like what is it about marketing that made you just dive in and devour that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I dove into like those cheap ebooks, all of which were about building websites. So at that point, that's what I thought marketing was. I was like, websites, like newspapers, TV ads. I understood that. I didn't understand a lot of the nuances of online. But at that point, it was really just, it seemed interesting, but it also was like, I can either sit in front of a computer and stare at a console screen all day and you make decent money. But then when I looked at what they were doing and I was like, okay, you manage 10 clients, the way they were charging, that's like 12 grand a month. That's like a lot of money for a couple hours of work.
Yeah.
Like that was insane to me. And I was like, great, I understand they have overhead and employees and all, but they're still making killing on that. And it really was like, once I understood their business model more, that's what I think really sparked the curiosity. I was like, wait a minute, why did I not hear about any of this when I was talking to like, like college recruiters and all that type of stuff? Like, why did nobody tell me this was a thing? And obviously now, you and I both know just how far behind colleges and universities and things are. But it really wasn't until years down the road, I was like, that's why no one told me, because no one knew about it until then, other than the folks on the ground working day to day. And they're like, there's this whole world.
Yeah. The strangest thing to me is that copywriting, direct response copywriting, has been around like for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a marketing class in college. I'd never heard the word copywriting until I got into the internet business. And it's like a core component of marketing. It's like what makes marketing work. Even if you're going to do brand marketing, if you can understand the direct response approach to that, you're going to be so much better off. And so it blew my mind that they don't even mention that in university. And that's what makes marketing work.
Yeah, the thing that was really, really funny. So I want to say, and I really hate admitting this, I didn't know what copywriting really meant until I'd say like maybe 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when I got out of agencies. And then like they use the word copywriting all the time. They're like, copywriting is this. And for the longest time, I was like, okay, it's just content. Because that's how they describe it.
Yeah.
And there's no like thought or purpose behind a lot of it. Because it's a buzzword for them. But when you really understand what it is, you're like, holy crap. Like, yeah, like that's what makes everything work.
Yeah.
That's the foundation of so much in that space. And I really like, now I'm really wishing I was like, I spent all that time learning about social media, but social media, and at that time it was like Twitter and everything. Twitter was a trend, but if you learn the foundation behind that, which was copywriting, understanding how to, influence consumer behavior, all those things, those are what were the foundational skills that, it took me a long time to figure out those were the foundational skills.
Yeah.
But those are what I should have started with. And that would have, I don't even know how much further ahead certain things could have been. But again, hindsight's 2020, right?
Yeah, totally. I know. It blows me away what big agencies can get away with. And that's why I'm a proponent of the small agency, because some small agencies have to live and die by results. And the big agencies can just get away with just being big. And so the big companies will work with them. So
yeah. So the agency first agency that I joined, and then after school I joined them right again, and I was like, great, I want to work with you guys. They were a small agency that turned into one of those agencies, and not entirely, but they garnered this partnership with a newspaper. And as I'm sure newspaper ads, it's a dying thing. Certain folks, it does work 100%, but 80% of it, people aren't going to go and buy a 60-inch flat screen because they saw it on a newspaper. They're going to buy it because they want it. The newspaper is just a tool, means to an end. And they had that type of selling approach of, well, let's just put buzzwords in front of them and back it up with a service that's half-assed.
Yeah.
And then thinking back to it, I was, we were all against it, but they'd sold it. And it's like, okay, they sold it. They got the cash for it. We can't say no now. And, they back into that corner a little bit. But that's the thing with the smaller agencies, especially when we went head to head, their sales team versus a small agency that was already with the company, lost out 9 times out of 10, because that small agency was results driven, better analytics. They knew exactly what they wanted to do. And because of this partnership, we had this like barrier that stopped us from being able to pitch in that same way. We were like, well, we do the attribution, we do the tracking. They just, they were like, oh, it's things the customer won't understand.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is, but it's things that, you feel good about it because you're doing what you can in the best way for them.
Yeah. But yeah, some of those big companies that have such a big budget to advertise, they'll just throw money at it and not really care about the tracking because they can.
Oh yeah.
They just allocate a certain percentage to marketing.
Oh yeah. There's a few companies that we had at that point. Cause we did like Google Ads SEO and social media. And I kept pushing for other things. I kept pushing for like Facebook ads and things at that time. And we had a lot of folks that were like that, where it was just, okay, my competitor advertises, I want to be advertising.
Yeah.
Don't care about like how many clicks you got, how many impressions you got. all they cared about every time was, and we get calls about this all the time, was, hey, I Googled my name, why don't I show up?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the best. And we, like, in some cases, that's all they wanted. And they'd tell us that explicitly. They'd be like, I just want to show up when someone searches my name. So we'd literally just bid on their brand name, and they'd pay us a good, like, couple grand a month just to do that.
Yeah. So they show up in paid search just for their brand keywords.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they expect always number one. Doesn't matter whether number 2 or 3 converts better, always has to be number 1.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So they're evaluating it from sort of an uninformed viewpoint.
Yeah.
This is why the game has changed even since then so much, I think, because analytics have gotten better, tracking has gotten better. I think direct response has made a comeback with how much we can track now. And it's really interesting to see the convergence of brand marketing and direct response.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing with a lot of these folks is, I mean, they before couldn't track any of the stuff like calls or anything like that. And now, I mean, calls with Google, it's baked in.
Yeah.
Like, they can know how many calls actually came in. They can see what comes out of it. But it's also just I want to say it's just an evolution of competition almost. Because at that point, I mean, I still remember the days of like 10 or 15 cent Google clicks.
Yeah.
Like, that was still a thing where you could bid on, like, and there was one that we had, it was Cash for Gold in Ontario, a few different cities. We were spending maybe $10 a day per city. And the guy was like, I can't handle the phone calls. Almost every other day, he'd be like, you got to shut it down for a couple more days. Like, you got to catch up. And it was just because he got so much traffic for $10 a day. It's unreal.
I know, if we could just get in a time machine with what we know now and go back, we'd be rich and we could retire in like a couple months.
Yeah.
It'd be insane.
Yeah. It'd be like those affiliate ads, the guy with like the $600,000 check.
Yeah.
Made this in 24 hours.
Exactly. Because he's the only one who's doing it. And it's like, he figured it out first.
Yeah.
So did you go and then graduate from college with an IT degree, or did you drop out?
Yep. I graduated with the most expensive piece of paper. Well, I mean, I guess when you buy a house, you also get a piece of paper. But one of the most expensive and useless pieces of paper that you can get by far and away, unless you go for an MBA or something, I imagine.
Yeah.
But I went for it, and horrible waste of time and money. But at this point, it was great just in the sake of, like, now you know, right? You've gone through that experience, now you know. And I think that's a little bit what drove me when I was working in that agency, because I gave them a good like 2 years straight of just heavy, like basically I tried to ingrain myself as much as possible as if I owned the company and all the money being spent was my own. So, you know, I put in the 120-hour weeks. I put in like basically nothing but eat, sleep, and living working for them.
Yeah.
And part of it was just the learning curve, right? For me, it was jumping into something brand new. I want to do it right, but I also want to learn as much as I can, because even at that point, I was looking back and I was like, why did I waste those years? This is really interesting to me. Like, this has potential. Because I saw them, they were just 2 guys and they scaled it up to a 10-person company. Just from the time when I first joined them as an intern, it was only a 4-person company. It's a 10-person company when I joined, not even a year and a half later. And I was like, there's something here. Like, if this can scale like this is the way that you can make money. And it happened to be interesting. So it was really interesting. It was really good for me. But I went heavy at it for 2 years, just learning everything I could. And the biggest kind of shift, I think, really came when I started diving into more things like copywriting. And I was like, wait a minute, there's a lot more behind these buzzwords you're just using to sell. There's a lot more behind it. And then after a certain period of time, I realized there's a lot bigger players in the little fish pool. For me, I thought, okay, great. Like, there's like 10 agencies I know of in Toronto. It's a small little pool. And then, you know, you start going to bigger players, bigger companies, and now you're actually competing with like 500-person agencies out of the UK for business. Small agencies, you can win sometimes. It's a matter of convenience, but unless you really know what you're doing, which I kind of realized through that trial and error, these guys, they knew, but they weren't at that level. That's when I realized, okay, if I want to take that next step, it's either going to be here if I can make drastic changes, or it has to be somewhere else. And at that point, I actually had that conversation with him. I kind of sat him down. I was like, hey, like, I need to do something bigger. So there's like at that point, I got really obsessed with tech companies, because tech companies were on the growth at that point.
Yeah.
And they were always talking about how they, you know, went from zero to hundreds of millions of dollars and things. And I was like, I want to try my hand at something like this. Do you think we can dedicate time to building out new stuff, either whether it's a new service, whether it's a new way of prospecting, but like, how can we grow it? And they were like, well, here's what we do. You know, here's what we've done for ages. That's what we're going to do. And at that point I was like, great. I'll be gone in 2 days.
Yeah.
At that point I actually got an offer before I had that conversation to go and join a tech company in Thailand, of all places. Okay. To work on a tech company that didn't seem super interesting at the time, but it was a play at tech, which is what I was after. And it was basically an offer of complete autonomy. It was like, here's this tech company, here's what we want to do. You're just going to come in and do what you need to do.
So were you brought on as kind of like head of growth?
Kind of. It was a weird structure. It was like an overly corporate structure for like 12-person tech company. But it was just the owner's background was in bigger corporate companies. So I think my official title was like marketing manager.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's no one else in marketing. So manager of what?
Yeah. You're doing it all.
Yeah.
So was this a Thai company, or they were just located in Thailand?
It was a UK company, I believe it was, located in Thailand, out of like the only corporate office in Koh Samui.
Oh, wow.
The like IT tech center there. And they were like, I mean, they were legitimately aiming for like big scale, but it was as close to what I'd call like a growth hacking type position. And that's like, you know, that's like the whole, you know, tech company way of saying just, you got to grow with very, very little money or no money at all.
Yeah. Growth hacking is like marketing without a budget.
Yeah. It's like we pay your salary, everything else got to come for free.
Yeah.
That was like the closest to that and what they wanted to do, because it was a really big B2C freemium type play. They were basically aiming to be like a YouTube, but with a different form of monetization. So, you know, you think a YouTube video, easy to share, really easy to go and do that. But it was a really interesting company just because he was basically like, great, here's what we want to do. Here's some goals. Go and do whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
And it was cool just because it was very tech heavy. So when you have like a tech heavy company, you realize how much stuff is actually possible, where otherwise you're thinking like it's technically impossible. But it's like, no, it's totally possible. Yeah, that stuff is possible. You have in your mind that you think like, hey, this would be cool. It's just, you know, sometimes there's dev resources or otherwise, or you just don't know that that's a reality. You can do that. And that was like the biggest, I think, eye opener when I was thinking through like, you know, what makes a tech company grow? You got this, and this, and everything I kept coming down to was a paid thing. And then it was like, well, no, what if we just like take all this stuff that I could do as like manual work and just automate it some way? And it really just, it was total different lifestyle in Thailand, but it was literally just one night we were all hanging out, drinking beers. And I was just talking about like, you know, I'm doing all this, like they were asking what my day-to-day was like. And I was like, I'm doing this, and this. And they're like, why? Like, why don't you just have a bot do that? And I was like, yeah, like, let's do that. So that was really interesting, getting that first fusion of like marketing and technology.
Yeah.
And just how well it can work together when you have a focus on like a core objective. Right? So like, yep.
Let's go back a little bit. First of all, you just got an offer to move to Thailand. Have you ever been out of the country before? Have you traveled internationally?
No. I talked to him on the phone. He was like, this is a good fit. Here's the issue. I guess it was like his sister, cousin, or something, was the one helping them with a lot of the marketing. And he's like, she's leaving by the end of this week. Or sorry, by the end of next week. So I need you on the ground before she leaves to get caught up.
Whoa. And how did you meet this guy? And then, yeah, what was going through your mind when you're considering going to Thailand?
It was LinkedIn. I'd actually applied for it like 2 months before. Cause I was like, at that point, that's when I started having the conversations with them about like, what else can we do? And they kept like stonewalling me. So I was like, great. Like, let's see what's out there. Like what tech companies are doing. I came across it on LinkedIn, and then like 2 months later, he reached out. He's like, sorry, we had like all these delays. Let's have a call. Your background seems really interesting. And we had this like 6-hour Skype conversation.
Wow.
Like legitimately, like supposed to be 30 minutes, and we just dove into it. And at the end of that call, he was like, great, I'm going to make you an offer. Like, do you think you can be here on the ground by this date, this time? I was like, send me the offer. Let me think about it. Cause it's a big decision. And it was like, basically I had to buy my ticket and everything and be on the ground within like 5 days.
Yeah. That's kind of crazy, especially if you've never done that before.
Yeah. It was also like 4 months earlier that I just bought my condo. So I had planned to settle down and everything in Toronto. But I mean, it's an opportunity where we were both really on the same page during that entire call. We were just talking about all the different things we could do, everything that he wanted it to be. And it just felt really right when he was just like, every time I'd throw an idea, he's just validating it. Like, yeah, let's try that.
Yeah.
Like he's just, complete opposite to what I'd seen in the agency setting. And so, yeah, after that final conversation where they're like, no, we can't do it. Then I was like, great. I'm happy to support you guys for like the month or 2 months or whatever you need, but I'm going to be in Thailand. I was like, they got to get me out there in like 3 days. So I literally, I think I spent maybe like 2 days packing and then head to the airport and then flew out.
And so that's crazy. So one of the big motivators for you was the autonomy. You're going to get to head of marketing, do whatever you want. Was there, at this point, were you concerned about like equity, making a lot of money, or you're more concerned with learning? What was kind of your focus, and did they give you an equity deal? Or? Yeah,
so they were kind of an interesting one, and I mean, it was the exact same amount I was making at the agency, but the way he put it, and I think I still have the email somewhere. It was like the greatest email I think I've ever read. He was like, so we're going to offer you this because that's what you're making now, but you're going to be in Thailand. So what that really means is, and then he listed out all these things. He's like, that means in a typical day, you can do this. And it was like, you can have your maid wake you up in the morning and cook you breakfast and like take a chauffeur to the office and, go and have like lunch delivered to you. And then he's like, goes after work. He's like, you can go get a massage and go have a drink on like the W, and like he listed all that. He's like, and that's going to cost you like $25 for the day.
Yeah. It's crazy. I just got back from 6 months in Bali, and I haven't spent more than maybe $3.50 on a meal.
Yeah.
And I went out to dinner with my friend the other day, and the entree was like $46. It's just like a mid-range hipster restaurant. And we're like, what is this? So it's like a totally different lifestyle.
Yeah. It like scarred me for life when I came back.
Yeah.
But so he made that offer, and he's like, as it grows, you can have the option for equity. But he was like, as it grows, like it's going to be a cash generator. So we're probably not going to give you equity. We'll just give you cash. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. It's basically, if I can perform well and make it work, there's monetary reward at the end of it. But the change of pace, change of scenery, change of lifestyle was the thing that really drove it home.
Cool.
Where it's like, there's autonomy, but at the same time, I didn't realize it at that point, but I definitely realize it now, is when I was there, those like 20-hour days and things, they were easy. Like when you're doing something that you like, but also in an environment where you're just like, everybody is going towards the exact same goal and everybody's on that same page. like it's easy to go in, and I literally my day, because I was super excited. I was like, this is new country, this is crazy, new everything. Work with a bunch of like Russian dudes and stuff. Like no one that's come from Canada or the US other than me and one dev. Everybody else is from like all over the place, places I've never been. So I was super excited. Like every day I'd show up at like 6 a.m, like before the cleaning crew had even started their rounds. And I'd just be sitting there, and the air conditioning hadn't turned on, because the air conditioning turns on at like 8 a.m. or something in the building. And I'd be there, and then until like 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night. And then we'd all end up heading out to either go dinner or go to a bar or whatever. But I mean, we'd still keep talking about work. And it was totally fine. Like there was no mental stress about it or anything, because it was like we all wanted this to work. We all wanted to figure out ways to support each other.
It's a real startup mentality where it's like everybody's on the same mission, and you're going to make it happen whatever it takes. And
I think at that point, again, something I didn't necessarily realize, but it was there, is like that culture of everybody being on the same page is what made it work, and what made it like unbelievably easy for everybody to come in and do what they had to do every day. Whereas like, if we had one person thrown in there that just, was like hating life or whatever, it would have been totally different.
So everybody was a true believer.
Exactly. And that was a fun experience. Also just looking at like, here's all these things we could do. All of them take money. What do we do if we don't have any money? And it really gets you thinking outside the box. And I mean, it was fun. Like the first month, I think we did something like 40 or 50,000 new users. And it was purely just like distribution, just exploiting the hell out of Reddit. Reddit was an awesome driver. But at that point, I'd also started learning more about like national SEO, because I was looking at everything we were doing, and I was like, we just have so much content and so many different videos. Why are we getting so much traffic and all these really weird niche videos? And it was because for some reason or another, at that point, I kind of knew, but I didn't know entirely, they were ranking, because I mean, at that point, Google was nowhere near as competitive as it is, fast forward. But they were ranking because we just had this massive video platform with ridiculous amount of people that linked to it, ridiculous amount of people that shared videos on it. And as a result, like if some creator was on YouTube and uploaded a video on YouTube and uploaded a video on our platform, we'd show up like position 2 or 3. And so we'd get all this awesome traffic for it. And over time, that definitely snowballed. It snowballed a lot. But, all fun things come to an end at some point or another. That one
what happened?
Yeah, that one came to a weird end, because one night, myself and one of the dudes who is in an officer position, and then one of the devs, we were hanging out at our local haunt and talking video games. And at that point, it had kind of more become like the dude had spent a lot of money on it. He didn't monetize in the right way. So at that point, he was getting really stressed out about the financing aspect of it. And as a result, like inevitably that stress deteriorates the company, deteriorates the culture, everything like that. So one night we were hanging out and we were just talking about gaming, and we were like, wouldn't it be cool if we just like, if there was a social network for gamers, like Facebook for gamers? And, we talked about it for ages, and we were like, we couldn't, like none of us could name something off the top of our head that was just like a gamer community. And then we were talking about, we were talking about like playing Xbox Live and everything, and how hard it is to find folks to play with. And like a week later, the dev guy came back. He's like, so I built the baseline of a social network for gamers. And that kind of sparked into what's now Player.me. A little bit ago, they got acquired by XSplit. And that was like that was probably like the very first intro that I had to what is like real growth hacking. Because I mean, A, it was something I was super passionate about, but B, it was just something that we had to grow as quickly as humanly possible, because otherwise you can't get funding. I mean, the tech space was rampant with competition, social networks everywhere, almost weeks weeks, if not months after we launched, other social network for gamers started popping up like crazy.
So did the other company dissolve itself, or what happened? How did you make the transition between the two?
Yeah, they I actually don't know what happened to them entirely, but they kind of just like disappeared.
I mean, did you walk into work one day and they were like, "We're shutting down shop"?
Oh no. I basically just had a conversation with the guy. I was like, like the culture is getting kind of bad. Like devs are coming in and they're complaining all the time, and stuff's getting done, but a lot of stuff is in the backlog and it's not getting done because folks are not motivated to do it. And I was kind of like, I can keep working on it, but I don't think it's going to do you any service. Keep paying me for it if nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Because at that point we hit a lot of like tech bugs when they were trying to launch something and it didn't launch quite right. And so we just stacked up all this tech debt of like, the site wouldn't load for like 15 seconds, like stuff that was completely detrimental.
Yeah.
And at that point I was like, obviously we're seeing declining sign-up rates and stuff because the load time's high, videos aren't loading sometimes. It took in some cases like a couple of days for videos to get encoded. Like, yeah, it was all things that kill a platform.
Yeah.
So I had that conversation with him. He's like, yeah, stay on for, however long and then transition. I was like, okay, we'll do that.
Okay. So you just told him you were going to leave?
Yeah. I was just like, I'll if you want me to go like this week, cause obviously it's not working out when you keep paying me, I can leave. And he's like, well, no, like let's do proper transition, get your stuff together, make sure everything's easy to transition off. And then, yeah.
So did you stay in Thailand for this new company?
Yeah. So we launched it like 4 or 5 days before I left. Picked up TechCrunch news and all the fun stuff that you want when you launch a tech company. But almost immediately after, I actually ended up joining another tech company in Bangkok. Because at the time, obviously, it's not making any money. We were throwing money into it.
Yeah.
Running a tech company does take a good bit of server hosting costs. So I moved over to this tech company in Bangkok, which was like a task management, project management type company. And it was a company that actually planned on monetizing and everything. So for me, I was like, that's cool. Like, that's an experience I want. Now I've worked in a freemium type tech company, is just all about acquiring users. Player.me was all about acquiring users. Let's see how it is when there's actual monetization piece in it and it's selling to B2B and it's bigger companies. And that's mainly why I joined them, but also they had a team. They just didn't have any like heading for their team. They just had a bunch of like folks that were like writing copy, writing content, stuff like that, but they had no one directing them. So it's cool because at that point I got to work with a team, but also work with a company where it's purely B2B. I mean, the biggest thing was going in and trying to get accounts like Amex divisions, like a marketing division from Amex of like 10 people who would come in and spend at that point, it still wasn't monetized when I left it, even though that was the plan.
Yeah.
Now it is, but a team like that would come in and be worth, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a year.
Yeah. Okay.
Ideally. Yeah, I mean, during that time, I was running Player.me. We grew it as quickly as we could. We had some really cool like pitch meetings and stuff. And in the end, they didn't go for financing. It was when we didn't end up going for a round of financing. Instead, we decided to keep it back and keep growing it.
Yeah,
that was when I more switched to focusing full time on the other company, because I was like, okay, it's been like 6 months. We have tons and tons of users. Like, we got to find some way to monetize or something, because we can't bootstrap it on like $0.
Yeah. Were you getting paid at all during this time, or were you?
I moved to the other company, so I was still getting paid from them, but it was a good haircut from where I was at, because I just wanted to stay in Thailand with them. I wanted to make sure that we could stick around there and all be relatively close. Like, they were still in Koh Samui. I was in Bangkok. It's a 45-minute flight away.
Yeah.
But after like the 6 months of it, then I was like, okay, guys, like, I'm happy to support you guys, whatever way, shape, or form. But if we're not going to monetize in any way, shape, or form, there's going to be issues. Like,
Yeah.
we got server costs backing up and everything like that. And it did take them a good like 6 or 8 months in order to get it sold, or like do the acquisition afterwards. And I mean, now it's a pretty decent sized company, but it's definitely pivoted from what we originally created.
Yeah.
In that time.
Okay. So during this time, you're kind of working on a couple different projects. You must have liked the culture in Thailand if you stuck around this long, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was even in Bangkok, it was super fun. There's always stuff going on, super convenient. And yeah, I mean, even in Bangkok, like, yes, it's not a beach, but exact same style of like life. Like it's never really tiring. And I mean, at that point, like I was on those like BTS, the railways, like during morning commutes, getting packed in.
Yeah.
And I was like, this isn't actually so bad. I mean, it's like a 10-minute air conditioned ride. No one's that close because in Thailand, you don't just like bundle up and touch each other. And everybody, nobody likes to stand around the foreigner. So it's, it worked out.
Yeah. So for the people listening who maybe have never done one of these trips before, what was the biggest culture shock for you coming from Canada?
Yeah. Heat was a really big one, but I want to say for Koh Samui, it was like road safety.
Yeah.
There is no road safety there. They care very little about road safety, especially when you're on a motorbike. When you're on a motorbike, basically you either have to be like crazy aggressive, and I mean basically they'll think you're insane, so they leave you alone, or you have to be like super defensive because you'll have a massive truck like tailgate you, and tailgating there is like there's an inch between them and you. It's not like a couple feet. They'll tailgate you to get you out of the way and get around you. And then of course they'll honk and like move right back in before they finish passing you and all that. And that's normal. That's like you should expect that is basically how it was relayed to me.
Yeah. I remember I flew in to Koh Samui in October, this past October, and I had been to Thailand before, but it had been a couple of years. And it seemed to me like on the way home from the airport to the Airbnb, we almost killed like 3 or 4 different people in the van that I was in. And I was like, oh, it's good to be back in Thailand. This is the world we're living in. Yeah, it's just, it's insane there. It does have, I think, second highest traffic deaths per capita in the entire world. So
the funny thing is, more than half of that is pedestrians getting hit, not car accidents.
Really?
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
But I know that's a heavy one in Bangkok, because in Bangkok, we used to take the motorcycle taxis everywhere.
Yeah.
Like if you have no care for your life, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, I was like, I don't know how we lived. But a few times the boys from Player.me came over, and sometimes we'd need to get somewhere quick. So there's a few times, it definitely most of the time during the night, we'd end up paying the dude to just, haul ass on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Going like 80 kilometers an hour, barely missing people. And it just, you see your life flash before your eyes. But I mean, it's better than being in the road with cars where they can slam into you.
Yeah, that's what's so crazy. Like in Vietnam, there's so many scooters, more than in Thailand, and it's not really a car culture, so it's just all scooters in Vietnam. And in Thailand it's scooters, but then also tons of cars, and so I think that's why it's so bad there.
It was funny, what was it, it was like the 5th day before the 5 days before we were going to leave Bangkok and come back, and we actually just, me and my wife planned on coming and visiting, and then the coup happened and we ended up staying. But 5 days before we were going to leave was the first time I got into a motorcycle accident in Bangkok, literally from our condo to the BTS station, not even 600 meters.
Yeah.
We decided to take a motorcycle taxi because we were both running late. The guy comes, taxi's trying to like pull in to stop in front of the BTS station, smacks him right in the front. Luckily, It was like not very much, but I mean, you could tell like the bike was pretty much totaled.
Yeah.
but luckily like no injuries or anything. But it was so weird. Like, okay, this is like the week before I leave. I think that's a sign. Like, let's just stick to the cars from now on.
Did you guys go down in that accident or?
No, funnily enough, the guy was managed to keep the bike steady.
Cool.
And then he obviously freaked out at the dude in the taxi.
Yeah.
It was super awkward trying to walk away because I was late for work. I was like, let me pay you because I gotta go.
Yeah.
You deal with that. But that was interesting.
So the listeners can probably tell there's a certain amount of chaos in Southeast Asia that doesn't necessarily exist over here. Yeah. And I kind of like the chaos. There's like a rawness to it, like a realness. Mm-hmm. Like you feel like you're alive. What did you think of how chaotic it can be there?
I think it keeps you going. Like, I'm here, and when I came back, we went back to Toronto. Everybody's so tired all the time, and it's very low key. Like, yes, there's chaos, but nobody's energetic about it.
Yeah. But
in Thailand, like, people are always go, 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 go. And everybody's so friendly about it too. I mean, relatively friendly, unless there's like lots of traffic or something, then everybody gets upset and annoyed. But it keeps you going. And it's like that surge of energy every time you walk out. Like every time I went from the subway station to where the office was, like small walk, like not even 200 meters. You have all the street vendors. Like that jolts you right back up when you have like hundreds of people going back and forth. There's like food stalls over here. There's like a dude trying to like repair shoes over here. There's so much going on, and your mind just like has to go blank for a little bit to take it all in.
Yeah, there's like smells and sounds and all sorts of stuff happening. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I found it really cool, like really energetic. It just like boosted you back up every single time.
Yeah. And so you met your wife there too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That was interesting and random. But it happened to work out because I was there for a good like year and a little over a year and a half, or a little under a year and a half.
Yeah. And so did she have to decide to come back to Canada with you?
Well, so that's where it was kind of weird. Like we planned on only coming back. I think it was basically for like my brother's birthday or graduation or something. For my brother's graduation and for her to meet my parents. But then I want to say like 3 or 4 days after we got there, that's when the like, I don't even know, 6th coup or something happened.
Oh, really?
And so obviously like, middle of Bangkok's kind of, I mean, it's not as bad as they make it out to be on TV. All over at least.
Yeah.
But, middle of Bangkok, at least even where her work was like blocked off with like fires going in the street and everything like that. And so we were like, okay, like we could go back or we could wait it out. And waiting it out turned into like a good year, 2 years. And then, and then it was like, okay, well, let's at least start the process for like citizenship and stuff, because then you can travel whenever we want and it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah.
And now it's been a good while.
Yeah. How many years has it been now?
I want to say like 4 or 5 years now. We've been back a couple times now, but never for longer than like a month at a time. Part of it's also just, I want to say like, if I wanted to go back and work in Thailand, I think the visa situation's a lot tighter than it was previously. So even if I wanted to go back and work with like, with our own agency and everything, there's just a lot tighter visa situations. We have to do a lot more visa runs and things.
Yeah.
And even if I wanted to like set up a mini corporation in Thailand just to get by with it, it's definitely more expensive than it used to be.
Yeah.
It used to only be like $1,000 or $2,000 a month, and you could get away with enough people to sustain yourself a visa.
So you guys came and kind of decided to stay in Canada. When did you first, I mean, you mentioned before, like you saw kind of how much money people were making in the agency world, and like you were kind of indoctrinated, like, yeah, grow up, get a good education, get a good job, work really hard. But the upper limit on that is not very high at all compared to owning your own business.
Oh yeah. It took a good it took a good like contract or two when I came back to realize that. Because at that point I was like, okay, I've been in a couple tech companies. I have some good stats behind, the performance I've had.
Yeah.
Like, let's see what a tech company looks like here. And when I joined one, that's when I started really understanding, like, once you get to a certain point, especially when they have like VC funding and all their funding rounds, they have a really well structured limit of how much you can make, and there's nothing above that.
Yeah.
And that limit is like, it's not very far from, I think on the high end is like 150 to 175,000 Canadian, which is like 120 to 130 US, which isn't bad, by any means, but it's not like, it doesn't really give you a sense of financial freedom or time freedom when you're talking about, like, at that point it was, but luckily we still had the condo, didn't have to go crazy, but it was still an hour and a half commute each way. So 3 hours total.
Yeah.
On a subway. So no internet connection or anything anyway. So there's not much you can do.
Oh, wow.
And obviously, like, during the rush hours, like, those get packed.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, it was fun to start because I was like, oh, I'm back. And then after like 3 months, I was like, this is miserable. Like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
I was right back to it. And that was around the time I came across the foundation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And for people listening, can you just give a brief overview of what the foundation is?
Yes. The foundation was basically a program where you'd learn how to build a tech company or a software and run it as a company. So build your own software business without an idea, without any marketing background, I think it was literally like without any idea of what you're doing. That was their line. And I mean, honestly, I still look at it and I'm like, it was so much more than that, but it was so much more than that, but it also wasn't really that. It wasn't really all focused around software companies.
No, that's what I was going to say is that looking back, the foundation was a program about customer development. It was, how do you go into a market and figure out what problems people have in that market and then like provide a solution. And so it was about like customer development and copywriting. That was like the main focus.
I mean, for me, I always kept looking at it and I was like, okay, like even now I look at it as like, that's where I learned what an entrepreneur really was. Where like you're in the tech space, everybody calls themselves an entrepreneur. None of them are. They're basically dudes who thought up something that's tangible enough to basically build themselves a job. And get someone else to finance it for them. That's kind of what most of these tech companies are. But there was that resonance for me. I was like, I like tech companies. I just don't like working in a tech company. So I was like, I can build my own. And that evolved to so much more for me, where it was, that full foundation of mindset was, I think, the biggest thing. It's obviously the biggest thing where most folks struggle. For me, it was the biggest thing where I struggled in realizing that there's better uses for the skills that I built up, or like better ways to monetize them. And I mean, like, there's always different reasons for that. But the biggest thing that they really like hammered into was, it's always you that's responsible for where you're at. They didn't say it in as many words, which, I mean, now like the mentors I have now say it in that many words. They're like, it's only you. That's the reason why you are where you are. But that's what they grinded into you with all the different exercises and things that they had. But that was definitely where I learned the proper foundation for copywriting, where I learned the proper foundation for like adjusting my mindset. And I mean, even that time I tried for the SaaS route. I don't even know how many folks I reached out to and everything to try and go after it. But at that point, when I realized like, hey, you can apply this to other things, that's when I first dove into like consulting and coaching and running an agency. Because I was like, well, I can just do what these guys did, the first guys I worked with, but I can just make way more money because I mean, like, I actually know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I was like, why don't I just charge more? And that's literally how I used the foundation. I was like, great. So if I want to just sell my skill set, but I want to work with a specific set of folks, so tech companies, how do I do that? And that's what I pulled out of the foundation and how to do is just get in front of tech companies, be like, hey, I've run companies, I've run tech companies, I've managed teams. Let me come in and get yourself organized for growth. And that was the very first consultancy that I built up, was approaching tech companies and being like, hey, let me come in as like a contracted or consultant CEO or CMO and get your marketing team in order.
Cool. Do you remember the very first deal? Like, do you remember when you landed your first deal as kind of like an independent business owner?
It's funny. I don't remember the very first company. I remember the first few deals, but I can't remember which one was first. But I definitely remember the first deals being like, I mean, I think the very first one, which one was I think the very first one was an education technology company. I think they were the first. And it was like I freaked out after I hopped off the phone with them, because they basically were ready to write a check for like 12 grand for like 3 months of consulting. And I was like, holy shit, like that is better than most of these tech companies are offering for full-time work. But also like the amount of time I'd laid out for them was like 45 minutes a week. So I was like, in what I'd spend in 1 week working with a tech company, I mean, I made 10 times that with these dudes in one sale. And I was like, I was ecstatic. At that point, I mean, it was all cold email and stuff too. So I was like, there's no cost behind this. Like, this is unreal.
Just all profit.
Yeah. And it, I mean, it still balled pretty well from there. It was just like, great, like take the same thing, just do it again, do it again, do it again. But you know, with that, when you're new to it all, you lose sight of what drove that. And obviously you get into like, well, I could do this, or what if I tried this to get clients? What if I do this to get clients? And that's what that was probably the first real thing that I started after the foundation, after everything, where like I achieved a level of success, and then because of my own shiny object syndrome, I let it fail so miserably. I mean, I say that really, I just didn't close any more sales. It's not like I went bankrupt. It's not like I spent more money than I made. It's not anything like that. I let it die because I didn't focus on what was working enough.
Yeah, there's this strange thing. I think it happens to all of us, where you go and you do something that works, and as soon as it's working, then all you want to do is try new things instead of just like repeating what just worked. Like you have the proof right in front of you. And it's just like, all right, what else can we do? What else can we do? And it's like, just do the same thing over and over again.
It's exactly that, 100%.
But yeah, I also wanted to ask, landing your first client, working for a tech company and being good at marketing and having that role, it's still a totally different thing than you going out there and you eat what you kill, and all of a sudden somebody's paying you money directly. There's no hiding under a company name or anything like that. Did you feel like an increased sense of responsibility or pressure when you got into that?
Oh, 100%. 100%. You feel this like really weird nervousness. And especially, I mean, at that point is consulting and coaching, right? So it's all on Zoom type calls. At that point we were using Skype because Zoom wasn't a thing. But it's all calls on Skype. And I mean, they only know you as much as whatever you do in that 45-minute call. So like that puts a lot of pressure on it. I think every time with that first client, I must have spent upwards of like 3 hours preparing for each call. And then I kept thinking through, like, am I giving them enough value? So I kept adding things to it. I was like, well, great. I mean, if you need me to review this, send it over. I'll get it done beforehand. And I definitely like mess myself up on time and everything with those. But that was like, it was surreal with the first one. Once I got to like the third or fourth one, I was like, okay, I'm more confident with this. I get what value they're getting out of it. And like, I know I can do it with this. But it wasn't until that fourth one where I was like 6 months into doing it, and I was like, okay, yes, I can deliver. I know that this is exactly what they want.
I remember when I first took coaching clients, I would just be like, what if we have nothing to talk about? Like, what if I get on there and 5 minutes in, where it's complete silence and I don't know what to say? And yeah, after a while, it was just like, okay, I get on the call. There's always things to talk about, and there's always things that I can help with. And I realized like, oh, okay, I know enough. I'm like conscious of my competence now. Like I know enough to help.
Yeah. And I mean, I kind of put myself in that like scared scenario just because I decided at that point to form my consulting offer based on Frank Kern, which was the giant sales letter of, you know, if you don't get value out of this, I'll refund your money and write you a check.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, I'm going to do that because I think I can do it.
Yeah.
And then I honestly scared the hell out of myself when I did that.
Yeah.
Because every call I was like, I got to make sure I deliver value. Otherwise these dudes are going to ask for a refund.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, it was a huge learning curve, huge learning experience of just actually jumping in and doing it. But you realize, and I realized especially like a few months into that, that was when I started investing more into information products and courses and things. Cause I was like, okay, I need to move faster. This made me move really fast. What if I just add more to it and just kept adding fuel to the fire with new courses and things? And that was when I started learning things like, you know, most of the successful guys out there had done 20, 30, 40 different things before one hit and one stuck.
Yeah.
And that, you know, a lot of folks like it's trial and error. It's the action of doing that gets you comfortable. It's the action of doing that makes it easy. And that was also when I started doing a lot more like self-reflection and understanding like, you know, the only reason why at that point I was comfortable on the phone was because when I worked in that agency, they made me do a lot of the sales calls.
Oh yeah.
And because of them putting me in that position, you know, after like 100 sales calls, like, I mean, I could basically talk out of my ass about anything.
Yeah. What do you think,
really easy.
After all you've done up until this point, what do you think was your strongest skill set you had developed?
For a time there, I thought it was copywriting when I really focused in on it, and then I let that lax way too much. I think at this point, the biggest one by far and away is a strong mindset and being comfortable in like ambiguity.
Yeah.
Because like I never went so crazy that like, you know, I probably can, but I wouldn't want to pick up the phone and make like 100 sales calls.
Yeah. Like
100 cold calls. Like I don't want to do that anymore. I probably still could and do pretty decent at it, but it like, that's just accumulation of being more comfortable with like what you got to do, what you got to deliver, the service you're offering, things like that. And I think honestly, the biggest thing that I had holding me back that entire time until I ended up going through the foundation and going out and actually doing it all myself was mindset by far and away. I was like a massive introvert. I still kind of hate going out and doing things.
Yeah.
I like meeting new people, but only when they're connected to me in some way, shape, or form through like Facebook or something like that.
Yeah, there's some structure behind it.
Exactly. But like going out and like meeting someone cold, like that's still not something I like at all. Like if I force myself to do it and I think through it enough, I'll do it. And if I challenge myself enough to do it, I'll do it. But that's how I've kind of developed it to be able to be done. Is like, okay, you know, and I literally had this happen at one point, was a 7-day like new client challenge. And I just started like cold dialing a list of SaaS CEOs.
Yeah.
And I was like, the only reason why I would ever do that is because I challenged myself that I have to do this within a certain amount of days.
Yeah.
And that was the best way I could think of how. Otherwise, like if that was in any other situation, I'd make up a billion things to put in front of doing that one task.
Yeah, totally.
For sure.
Cold calling is hard. It works though. I did the same thing as you. I had at one point I was cold calling every day, and it took so much to work myself up to actually get there. But it did work. Yeah. I wouldn't do it these days, but
I still what I've started doing on the weekends now, because I think comfort on the phone is a big thing. It's one of the hardest skills to develop, and if you let it sit and get rusty, it becomes really hard to get back to it.
Yeah.
And I notice it now. I mean, we have a call with someone, and if it is something cold, I feel the nervousness even in just like listening to myself talk.
Yeah.
And that's only because I'm not into it all day, every day. So starting this past weekend, actually, I started grabbing lists of folks, and I cold call them now for deal flow. Yeah.
Wow.
Not a lot, like 50, 60 people a weekend, but enough that it's like pushing myself to do it.
Yeah.
I just want to get back into that. Like, okay, if I pick up the phone, it's not a reason to get nervous or anything. Like, I know what I want to say. You know, if something comes up and it's a totally different question, that's fine. There's a way to deal with it.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to psych yourself up every time before that too. You're just like, okay, it's okay. It's all going to be good. Worst comes worst, is just hang up the phone and say it was a wrong number.
Yeah. Wow. So I want to get into your habits. You have so many habits that I think cultivate growth and are can like over the long term provide such amazing results. But I want to go back to in time to like foundation era.
Yeah.
Where I had like maybe seen you around online, maybe in the foundation, I'm not sure. But at one point when you Googled sales funnel, I think your site came up first as from sales funnel.
Yeah, that was something my coach at the time totally advised me against. Meanwhile, I mean, you know, shout out for that. And now I'm selling the site for like 60 grand. So nice. It was a worthy investment of time.
Why did they advise you against it?
He always said your time is better spent prospecting than it is doing anything else.
Okay.
So if you'd spend 2 hours a week working on a website over the course of a year, you could have potentially closed, and he was great with numbers. And that's the only reason why I developed some way, shape, or form being able to work with numbers on a call. But he's basically like, over that time, you'd be able to close something like 20 or 30 clients. Yeah. And he'd always go back and be like, so does 200 grand sound better than a website that's only going to generate you 2 clients a year?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, yeah, of course. Like, great. Thanks for that.
But then behind his back, you're just like, I'm building the site anyways.
I was on weekends. I was like, I got some time. Like, I got to get this stuff out of my head. Let's just do it. But that was very soon after the foundation, after I'd started doing the consulting stuff. And I was like, okay, tech companies is fun. Everything's different though. Like every new company is a new challenge. And very quickly, what I was noticing was a lot of them didn't want the coaching, but they had other needs, and they'd always ask if I'd be able to help in some other way. And at that point, I just hadn't developed anything. So I actually ended up, I don't remember how I got in touch with them. I have a feeling it was through one of the videos in the foundation was about like selling. And I was like, sales is always a big thing. Like, I'm not great at it, but I'm comfortable enough with it. Let's see if there's a way that I can leverage that. And that's where I met the great John Logar, the consulting genius. His background still like baffles my mind. But basically, the whole idea of his coaching was get better at sales, make more sales.
Yeah.
That's it. When like the very first call I got on with him, he's like, service doesn't matter, product doesn't matter who you want to serve. All you need to know is what you want to sell, how you're going to get in front of them, and basically how you're going to sell them.
Because sales takes care of every other problem, right? If you are making sales, then you have the cash flow to deal with every other problem in the business.
Yeah. I mean, that was always his model. And that still is an awesome model, is if you can sell your clients or any market, you can find someone to fulfill on that.
Yeah.
And even if they own, I mean, at that point, he said it a few times where he's like, even if they just half-ass it, like, that's fine. Because when they're a big enough company, that half-assing it's still going to be better than what their internal person can do. And I was like, yeah, I mean, like, really, I've been in those companies. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest thing. It was just every time his hammering was, okay, what market are you in? How many prospects have you reached out to? How many offers have you made?
Yeah.
And if you hadn't made any offers, that's why every time he'd circle back to, that's why you're not closing deals.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not making offers, no one has the opportunity to buy. They don't have the opportunity to pay you money. But that was when I got into the sales funnel agency, because that first call, I was like, like, I've been doing this, it's working, but it's obviously not scaling. Tell me what to do. And I was like, I literally just put it on him. I was like, tell me what to do, what market to go in, what service to offer, and I will do it. And he's like, great. So sales funnels is a good thing. This is a good thing. And once he said sales funnels, I was like, that sounds new. I've never heard of that. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And it just so happened, it was like early days of Russell Brunson. Like, this was when .com secrets was a thing, but it was like, even that was new at the time.
Yeah, it's hard to remember this because he came out of nowhere. Well, apparently he was already famous in the industry, but I had been in the industry and I had never heard of him.
In his space, right?
Yeah.
He'd been in this small space. And I honestly thought, like, when I started reading his book, I was like, the first couple chapters, I was like, okay, this is BS. Like,
yeah.
Okay, supplements. Yeah, great. Like, I've seen those dudes before. Those are the dudes that I see on Warrior Forum all the time with the $5 ebooks.
Uh-huh.
And then, like, you get into it, and that journey is like, shoot, like, after a while, you're like, okay, like, I resonate with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the same journey I went through.
Yeah.
But like, sales funnels at the time were so early on. It was amazing compared to even now. It's only been 5-6 years, something like that.
Yeah, it really hasn't been very long.
It's crazy how much it's changed. But at that time, he was basically like, great. I was like, great, sales funnels. I want to learn about it. What do I do? And he's like, great, read these 3 books. And I still remember he was like, here's this one book, like .com secrets, this book. And then he's like, get the book from the Product Launch Formula dude. Read the first 15 pages and then throw it out. You don't need the rest of it.
Yeah.
And he said, literally do that. If you don't throw it out, you're going to go down a rabbit hole you don't need to get to. And I obviously read through it, and I went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, because the Product Launch Formula.
It was the theory. The first few pages was about the theory behind why a sales funnel is a valuable tool. Once you get beyond that, it goes right into what Product Launch Formula is and why. I mean, basically, the rest of the book sells you on why it's the right and, like, the only methodology. Yeah. That's why he didn't want me to keep reading it, because he was like, if you get indoctrinated into that, you're not going to serve your clients well. You need to look at it objectively as, here's the theory. Now, can you sell with that theory? Like, for sure. If I can explain what a sales funnel is, I can sell it. That's all he wanted me to get into. .com secrets was the mean to an end, because he goes through, I think in the book, he goes to like 5 or 6 different sales funnels. Like, he actually shows you the objective view of it. Right. And so, yeah, at that time, that was why, because I was trying to sell sales funnels to everybody. Like, almost every couple of weeks, we'd go through markets, and I was like, okay, great. We tried office furniture. Like, they didn't like my emails. They didn't like my VSLs. They thought I was an idiot. Like, they were like, yes, it'd be awesome if we could get 2 or 4 more office sales, but how the hell are you going to do it? And I had no idea.
Yeah.
And then we just landed on this idea of, well, what if I just sell the service? Who cares about the market? He didn't like that at all. to start, he didn't like that. But when I started closing deals, he was like, okay, maybe that works.
Yeah.
But that was when we ranked for sales funnel agency, because I was like, it'd be great to just say we're the sales funnel agency for X, but there's no other sales funnel agencies. Why not just take over the entire space?
Yeah, you were the only one. It was like stage 1 of the market.
Yeah. And it led to a lot of really awesome things. Like, that agency, I think, had the best legs to grow and keep growing, but the project base of it was, and I think this is exactly why he was saying to niche down rather than just on service, is because a sales funnel is so big of a project when you deal with everybody. And it took, like, I don't even know how many sales funnels we had built at that point, like hundreds upon hundreds for clients. And we were then like, this is crazy.
And every new client, you would just do a custom
from scratch.
Yeah, which means you have to, like, research the market, figure out the customer avatar, like, figure out what messaging works, what kind of funnels work, every single thing.
And the thing was, at that point, like, we still didn't really have a designer. So, and that was the thing that really irked a lot of the business owners that were in the bigger space, like the bigger businesses. They were like, well, it has to look like our brand.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if you have the copy and you have everything else right, it won't matter. but they couldn't digest that.
Yeah.
And so that's where we started having more issues, where it was like, great, let's get a designer in, but now we have a whole nother leg of the project that takes way longer to get through. And that's where it started getting iffy for me. I was like, the amount of time I'm spending on like project management was way outweighed everything else, just because it's really hard to hire for project management, especially when it was new enough and it wasn't as well taught enough as it is now, that it's really hard to get someone ramped up on it.
Yeah.
And so like, that was the biggest pain, was like, great, we're first mover. We got a lot of opportunity because of it. Now, because we're first mover, we either have this massive barrier of bringing folks on board, or we just let other people jump into the space.
Yeah. So you built this to a pretty big agency though, right?
Yeah. I mean, we do, like, some of the folks we worked with, I can't really talk about it because the NDA is still active.
Yeah.
But I mean, we partnered at one point with Scott Olford, guy behind the SSF method.
Yeah.
And we were working on like clients that wanted his method as a sales funnel, like built out for them. And that was a good amount of project flow. But we even were working on like, what we would call tiny projects, but they're still big.
Yeah.
Which was quiz funnels. People loved quiz funnels for like 2 years ago. People were loving quiz funnels.
Yeah.
And they weren't the cheapest. Like, we would sell them at like a $2,500 package, like not cheap at all. But I mean, we'd be selling like 4 or 5 a week.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, so many would come through. And the problem is, again, like, it's not like it's that much less work to do a quiz funnel when you're actually targeting the cold traffic on the front end than like a VSL or a webinar funnel, because you still have to know how to categorize them, what to then offer them on the back end of that. It became this whole thing. And I mean, basically we kind of just sold off some of the assets. At that point, we were like, we have some clients on like retainer management for the funnels. We called it like a maintenance package. It was basically ongoing funnel maintenance. But because we didn't have a whole lot of folks on those packages, it wasn't as like scalable as, I know there's some like Funnel Butler or something like that. There's a few of those like monthly management services, like WordPress fixes on demand, but as a monthly subscription.
Were you guys selling traffic or just the funnels?
We weren't. At that point, we weren't.
Okay.
We tried for a little bit, but because of how big the projects got, we had to focus in on either traffic or funnels. We couldn't do both.
Yeah.
And it was at that point that we were like, great, this is becoming way too many like projects. Let's just sell off the folks we have on maintenance packages and get them, better situated by whoever wants to take them on. And let's refocus on how we can actually scale this. Because at that point, it was still the same thing of like lots and lots of hours, lots of time. And I liked it. But once we got into all these projects, like the hate of doing all that every day came right back.
It's like an endless grind.
Exactly. Well, because what I realized very soon after was, when you have so much riding on the client's mind to decide, like when you're at their mercy of things, that's when like you're never happy with that.
Yeah.
And so it took a good while to get to the point where we're at now, using like a cloned funnel same funnel every single time.
Yeah.
But I mean, even at that point, that wasn't really the thing. It was like, everybody wants this type of funnel, that type of funnel, that type of funnel. But people didn't quite realize, like, they're all just tools to an end.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, at that point, you could still use a quiz funnel for a high ticket sale. 100%.
Yeah.
It was just a means to an end.
So when did the switch come? I mean, for people listening, this is what we teach in WFA, is like niche down, simplify the process, and find one thing that works and repeat it over and over again. And you're alluding to like, this is kind of where you got to, is like, I can use the same funnel for more than one client. How did this happen where you understood how to simplify things?
Yeah. So in between the sales funnel agency and where we're at now, we did 3 other agencies. We did one that was, again, kind of like, it was basically like Facebook ads as a service. So we were like, okay, I was basically thinking again, like, let's niche down on service.
Yeah.
And Facebook ads is a little bit easier. We were working with like coaches and consultants and things.
Yeah.
And that was like the worst niche choice ever because they're all totally different again.
Yeah.
So after a bit of that, again, we kind of transitioned out of it. And then that was when we did the first like properly vertical scaled agency where we were looking at real estate.
Nice.
And it was, okay, great. Like there's 3 or 4 funnels that work for real estate. Real estate agents are the focus. It's the same funnels every single time. How do we scale this? And it just happened to kind of be at the time where Facebook ads were new enough that some agents were paying for it, but they didn't want to pay a lot even still. Yeah. So I didn't know as much about the market as I really should have when I jumped into it. So when we were trying to sell it, we were trying to sell them on this hybrid package from everything we'd done, which was like, hey, we'll build you out the funnel. We'll build you out the automation on the back end that lasts for like 2 years. We'll build you out like the short-term follow-up automation, and we'll bring you in buyers and sellers through all of that and basically have this massive pipeline created for you. Like we basically created like the real estate business in a box.
Yeah.
If you were, and it was kind of stupid, we were like, if you were a newer realtor, like this would get you the pipeline the size of a dude that's been in the industry for 10 years. Meanwhile, new realtors don't have the cash flow for that. First off, we didn't do the market research as well as we should have. But we ended up targeting a lot of mid-market folks at the end of the day. And I mean, we sold some. I mean, I say we sold some. We still sold like 30, 40 grand worth in like a couple months.
Yeah.
But once we realized, and we kind of realized through sheer force, once we realized that the price point was too high for a lot of these folks and the timeline to see the return was too high for a lot of these folks. And we saw that forced through chargebacks like crazy.
Oh yeah.
We went from charging out like 40, 50 grand to having 20 grand in chargebacks.
Ouch.
Like the week later. That was when we realized like, okay, this isn't for everybody. But I also like, after that, I was like, I don't like this market. Let's cut this. There's another market. The model works. The market's not a fit.
Yeah. And that speaks so much to client selection. It's like that you could do the exact same thing, and depending on what kind of client you have, you could be wildly successful or completely fail.
100%. That was when we first also started working with some mortgage folks.
Okay.
And that was unreal. It was like night and day, even though it's like a shoulder niche. It's like right beside realtors, but not realtors. Where we were finding like a lot of these guys were totally open to spending 2, 3, 4 grand a month.
Yeah.
And they also got like the tiny mouse share of that deal, but they were still willing to pay that. Even though like their timeline may not be as long as a realtor's to close, but you're still talking about sometimes 30, 60, 90 days until they got their commissions out of it.
Yeah.
And they understood that. They treated it more like a business, I think, than most of the realtors we were talking to.
Yeah. I was trying not to put words in your mouth because I wanted to hear your perspective, but that's the thing that's coming to mind is like, there's no barrier to entry for real estate agents. And most of them, the bad clients out there are people that do not treat their business like a business. They treat it like a job or a paycheck or something, which are two totally different things.
100%.
And I don't know what it is about mortgage because I don't know that much about the space. Maybe it's licensing requirements, barrier to entry, something else. But it seems like there are professionals in the mortgage industry.
I think it's maybe the way that like the mortgage companies treat them. They treat them more like they are set up as their own business. Because I have a feeling, I'm not entirely sure on the business structure, but I think they have to set up like their own business structure and everything in order to get their commissions and all that. So they just, for some reason or other, they treat it more like a business. And once we made that little shift, like that started making a huge difference.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where things started evolving. Like we started looking at, okay, great. Now that we found the market, we found something to scale in. How do we serve them in the best way? Because at that point we were still just generating leads for them. We weren't doing anything added on to it. And that was when we started looking at like, okay, great. Like, yes, we want to add some things and we want to make it a higher value offer or have something that ingrains into their business more, but it can't be different every time.
Yeah.
And we went through a lot of variations of things we could add on and tried testing things we could add on. And that's where we kind of came to basically like what we offer now, which is, it's one funnel depending on the market. Every market has their one or two funnels that we use. Same copy, same creative for every single one. So any new learning always has that exponential effect across every single person that we work with in that market. But then we were like, what's the biggest thing that they have issues with, which is sales. It's getting in touch with the lead or having someone respond. Those are usually the biggest first barriers. And then sometimes the barrier after that is getting them booked in for an appointment or a sales meeting or whatever the case.
Yeah.
And I was thinking through like, we could add a salesperson in there or something. And then again, I was like, if I have to create a sales script for every single market, that's not scalable. It scales to a certain extent, but not everybody's going to use it. And obviously there's nuances and otherwise. So what we added was the automation. And it was lead comes in. What do we need them to do? Well, we don't need them to do anything other than respond. We can get them to respond to take the next logical step, only that one little step, that makes all the difference. And that's basically all we added, but it had like a massive impact on just like how many folks respond, how many go to appointment, how many actually get on the phone, because that's the only call to action. They're not getting like, hey, you subscribe for this coupon, you should come in the door and buy these other 6 things. It's like, no. When's a good time for you to come in to use your coupon? That's it.
Nice.
That's the message 16 times over in different ways.
Wow. So this is an email follow-up or text follow-up?
Email, SMS, and voicemail.
Okay, cool.
Every channel we can use without breaking any laws.
Yeah, nice. And so you simplified basically down to one niche, and then you just looked at their business and their problems holistically and said, how do we solve all the problems we can for these people to get one complete result for them?
Exactly. And it was, again, it came back to market research, which everything does, I think. Yeah. The more you know the market, the better it is in terms of like what solution you can deliver to them. Yeah. And for mortgage, the biggest thing we found was all day long, I could get them folks quote unquote, interested in purchasing a house. And I could get them for like 50 cents, 30 cents. In some cases, we were running this one campaign that was like 19 cents continuously for purchase leads.
Whoa.
But just because they're interested in purchasing doesn't mean they're ready to buy a home or their financing works or, like one of a million different things that needs to go right for them to be able to buy a house and have the intent for it.
Yeah.
And so through that market research is where we realize there's, within the US, there's different mortgage types that have different varying values and different varying values to the mortgage person, the loan officer versus the mortgage company, who's the one employing them. Mm-hmm. But then in addition to that, there's also different timelines and like levels of seriousness based on those people. And so like doing that level of market research, which really just took talking to a handful of them, like the proper conversation for a good like hour or two, and really just letting them vent on everything.
Yeah.
That's what got us that point of understanding like, okay, great. Purchase is one thing, but if they're a veteran or they live in a particular area covered by the Federal Housing Administration, there's a lot less barrier to get that loan.
Yeah. And
because there's less barrier, they're more willing to take advantage if they qualify and take advantage like in the short term, like in the next couple months. And then because of that as well, they have set loan sizes where they can't go below a certain amount, they can't go above a certain amount. So it's relatively easy to predict like what size of home and everything they're going to buy.
Yeah.
And so based on all of that, like that becomes really easy to target in for, but also really easy to get like the follow-up and everything going. Because at that point you can say like, great, they're going to come in, their loan size is going to be this. commission average is going to be this. So how many need to come in order to make our loan officer really happy and make a profit?
Yeah.
Like that math becomes a lot easier.
Cool. So it took some figuring out though. You had to go out there, you worked with a bunch of different niches, you got some progress in some, but then you would quit and go to something else. But it was by like really dialing in and getting to know your niche that you were able to be like the best at what you do. What do you like? How can people who aren't used to having to go through that trial and error, how can they adjust their mindset when they get frustrated when something, for example, doesn't work the first day and the first hour that they try it?
Yeah. One important thing to specify there is like we pivoted and adjusted, but that doesn't mean we didn't generate cash flow.
Yeah.
Like in many of those cases, we generated hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash flow before we were like, okay, this doesn't quite work. So we were never like, okay, we threw something against the wall and nothing came out of it for like 6 months straight. And then we shifted, like that doesn't work as a business, but we were like, okay, this doesn't scale for what I want. Or it was always something along those lines. But I think the biggest thing is just, it's always ask yourself, are you going deep enough? Are you really solving a pain or providing a solution that has a value?
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest, because when we were doing sales funnels, we were solving almost like a vanity pain. And I really hate saying it because we did so many funnels for people.
Yeah.
But for some people, it was a vanity pain. They were like, I want to run Facebook ads, so I need a funnel. But that's not necessarily true. They might have been just as fine running a lead ad or whatever at that time, but they may not have needed to go and spend $2,000-$3,000 on a sales funnel. But they probably could have got away with a landing page.
Yeah,
and it's looking back at it, I'd say it was still probably like 80-20. 80% got a good value. 20% they just wanted it, but it wasn't like nothing in their business was going to move until they'd gone through getting that thing, that shiny object for themselves. But thinking through now, it's always, is what I'm doing right now delivering a value? Is that value big enough that someone's really going to pay for it? And I mean, that's not a question I ask myself. That's what I ask someone in the market.
Yeah.
So, literally, I mean, cold calling, cold emailing, sending a message on Facebook, whatever it is, LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn, people love to answer on LinkedIn, especially if you say you'll give them 5 minutes to let them pitch whatever they want.
Yeah.
We'll give you the 5 minutes to ask a question. But literally just asking like, hey, if we were to do this, 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 and this, here's what this looks like. Is that actually valuable? And will it is it something you'd pull out your credit card for? Or is there something missing? Or is that just totally off mark?
Yeah. And so you've really gotten down to like, what is this business about? It's not about like a sales funnel or ads or anything. It's about the specific pain and the specific result.
It's funny. It all circles back to some of the foundation customer development stuff. It's, are we delivering a value worth paying for to the extent, and this was something I always tried to harp on, but sometimes it just gets lost in the weeds. Is it to the extent that they're paying, that whatever I'm delivering to them pays for itself and then some?
Yeah.
And I always like to see, like, if they can pay me whatever amount and they can double that within a 30 or 60-day period, even 90 days, depending on the market or, whatever the case, that's a really solid return. Like, that's a scalable business in just about any industry.
Yeah.
And so that is like pure value that you're driving. But if you're not able to like decipher that, or it's really unclear, like, then there's something missing. There's something that's not quite at the right value level, which is probably why they're not paying.
Yeah, totally. How do you know? Because you might talk to 10 people, and if you're new and you're not that great at sales and you're not great at communicating what you do or the value to the business, you might get rejected by all 10. How do you know when to give up and when to keep going?
Yeah. I like to set it as a numbers game very often. So I say, and I only have this number because it's also the same number that a lot of folks in tech used to talk about when it came to like getting VC funding for an idea.
Okay.
A lot of VCs would used to ask, have you talked to 1,000 people in your market?
Really?
Yeah. And if you hadn't done a customer development call with 1,000 people, even if that was only a 5-minute call to ask questions,
Yeah.
they wouldn't give them any funding.
Wow.
Even if the idea sounded amazing and the numbers looked amazing and they had cash flow running,
Yeah.
they were like, if you haven't done that, you haven't hit product market fit, or you haven't at least identified the starting point of product market fit. And I mean, I don't know if you need to do 1,000 these days, but even when we're looking at a new market and looking at, is what we're offering them really the right value? I mean, I still want to talk to 100 people in that market.
Yeah.
Even if it's just high level feedback, them saying like, yes, this video you sent me makes sense.
Totally. When you have those data points and you can see the trends across people, it's kind of like it just emerges from the woodwork and all of a sudden you see the matrix. It's like, oh, okay.
Exactly.
Talk to 100 people. I understand what's going on in this market now.
Exactly. And I mean, it becomes really, it's really unclear if you don't do that. Like, great example, we're starting on running some home security ads. We're working with one client right now that's running in a bunch of different cities. So they're scaling, but we're not getting enough feedback on whether like the quality is there or the cost per lead is good based on what they need, or all we know is right now what they've said, which is they're happy, it's profitable, but we have no idea other than that what the data are. And so like, yes, we can request that of them, and we do. We basically said like, hey, if we can't get more data points out of you, like we're gonna have to shut it down because I don't know whether it's scalable or not. And like they'll probably give us that, but otherwise, what I would do now, what I'm probably going to do, is reach out to every single person from home security companies to affiliate networks that offer home security as one of their like offers, to people who buy home security leads, and just ask like, hey, if I send you over some leads and some calls, can you give me a direct feedback on sales numbers, like, whether it makes sense or not, and, what the sales rate and everything typically looks like in the industry. So basically like, hey, if I give you some free calls, can you give me market research?
Yeah, cool. So you're just providing value up front and then you ask for a little something in return, and that's going to move the business forward.
Exactly.
And so you're talking about some more niches. One thing that I'm curious about is, like I said, you're one of the head coaches in WFA, so you work really hands-on with everybody there, and then you run our coaching program, the lab. And it's awesome for the students because you have experience with so many niches, and it's just like everything. How do you have time to do it all, though? Because your agency right now, as far as I know, it's doing multiple 6 figures, and then all the work that you do on WFA and all the work we do together. How do you balance all of that?
Yeah, and so this comes back entirely to building something that scales, which I think is the main reason why we've basically built out like 6 agencies now, and ended up scrapping a few of them, is simply for the reason that it didn't scale without me, or it didn't scale without a ton of time spent. And that's probably the biggest cool thing that I've learned with working in tech companies, working with developers, is like most things that humans can do can be automated and brought to like 80-90% there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And so things like client prospecting, like optimizing ads, tracking numbers, a lot of that can be systematized. But when you get to a certain point, and I mean, it's a little bit dependent on, what you need to live and everything like that. But when you get to a certain point, to grow your agency, you have to give up some control and give up some of that cash flow to buy back time.
Absolutely.
And that's probably the biggest thing which makes it all work is, yes, we're doing, I think we're like 26,000 a month or something right now in white label, and then a little bit more in some of the roofing stuff we're doing now. but not all of that is like cash in my bank.
Yeah.
Right. It's like a good chunk of that goes towards a VA that handles a lot of the client communications, goes towards someone who handles and manages and looks at all the ad data all the time. I mean, yeah, I'm sure on the high end between the two, they probably only spend like 8 or 9 hours a week, but I still pay them a good amount as if it was full time. But it's because like, I mean, they're really awesome at what they do and they can scale.
Yeah.
And they allow me to only have to spend, on the high end, maybe a couple hours a week on everything.
Yeah.
That's only if things are like going really not so great. So they have to keep asking me questions. Otherwise it just scales.
Yeah. So investing in the business to free up your time and then also focus on things that will grow the business moving forward.
Exactly.
But along those lines, a lot of people are just scared to invest. A lot of people are so focused on short-term cash flow, right? They're just like, they only care about profit. They only care about what money is in the bank right now. But you and your agencies, you have a longer-term outlook. Like, okay, how do we grow this without me being required every day? But I've also noticed that you place a really high value on mentorship and, info products and also like hands-on mentoring and coaching. Can you speak to like how that's influenced your career a little bit and your philosophy on that?
For sure. And I mean, it's a long-term outlook, but it's also, it doesn't take that long to generate your first few thousand in sales, at which point, depending on where you live, maybe you live in like Switzerland or something, it's really expensive, but otherwise in certain areas, I mean, 2 or 3 clients in, you have your personal everything paid for, at which point, I mean, a handful of clients, if your model is good, that's not more than a few hours a week.
Yeah.
So the rest of it scales and becomes really easy to scale. But I mean, a lot of that I didn't learn until I invested in like a mentor or a coach or an info product, or I mean, really whatever it was to help me get past that, like from 1 to 2.
Yeah.
And, that might've been at one point it was, how to like white label and outsource sales. That was a big one. That was a big one for me. I was like, I have to be the one selling. I know the product, they got to have that technical background.
Yeah.
First time I partnered with a sales guy, his close rate was like double mine. And I was like, great. I'm apparently not as useful as I thought I was. Yeah. It scales without me. I was like, for like a week there, I was like kind of depressed. I was like, shit. Like,
nobody needs me anymore.
But then I got questions from him that were like, I thought were like really like obvious answers and stuff. And I was like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, now I get it. He knows sales better than I do because I kind of focused on learning the general, but I mean, that's just so I can connect the dots. Yeah. That's what it was. And that was huge for me. Like the foundation was what lifted up my mindset enough to be able to be like, okay, yes, I can run something by myself and I don't have to fall back on, I mean, I come from a family of doctors. If you didn't go to school and you don't have a job, and I mean, even as a doctor, technically your job is working for the government. You're kind of seen as the outcast. Like mindset was huge to break past for me, because that's what you get grounded into every single day. So mindset was a huge one. Still always something I invest in. Even now I'm in a mastermind where all we talk about is, they like to call one of the calls freak performance. It's just about like how to break past that mindset, like what's holding you back, what's holding the business back, what's holding your actions back. Nice. So even now I invest in that. Skill acquisition is always a big one. I used to take I talked about like 120 hour week, 100 hour weeks. That was because I was consuming uncurated information. And that's a big differentiation that I realize now is when you're just reading a blog, like you're just reading whatever that person decides to put up at the time. But also the biggest thing I realized from investing in all these masterminds is you're consuming stuff that's been done like years ago that they now decided to make public.
Yeah.
And I noticed that a lot more so when I first bought some I'm going to kind of call him out on it. I bought recordings of traffic and conversions in 2017 because I was like, I got to go to this event. I wasn't able to make it. Let's try buying the recordings and see what magic is behind the scenes. And they were talking about chatbots, and I was like I used to work with Scott Wolford. I know him. He was talking about chatbots 2 years ago. What is this? This isn't new.
Yeah.
This is like over and done. Like, we're done with chatbots now. We moved on to the next thing. That was a massive eye opener because I think some we both though came back from, I'm not going to call it his name because he was so excited. He came back from Traffic Conversion. He's like so excited. He's like, man, chatbots, all these cool things. You guys testing this? I was like, man, I've been in it for 2 years now. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But I didn't learn any of that as a result of like just reading blogs. Like, I learned that because I invested in a partnership that then got me investing in an info product about chatbots, about how to use them, the theory behind them, why they're a psychological tool, not a new channel, right? It's not the same thing as like Facebook versus Twitter. It's Facebook is a way to get in front of people. Chatbots is another form other than a landing page to go to an end, capture information, teach them something, whatever the case. And those like understandings and those skill sets, those all came from either like mentorships or info products, or even like, now we haven't quite finished, but right now I'm in the middle of a mastermind that meets at the lovely time of 3 in the morning. Actually 4 in the morning. I have to wake up at 3 to make for it.
Yeah.
But with a person who I personally think is like phenomenal marketer, probably one of the best growth hackers in the world. Not probably, he is the best growth hacker in the world, bar none. Despite all the tech folks saying it's other people, he's the dude who exploits like the big guy, like the Googles and Facebooks of the world.
Yeah.
And I only invested in that because I wanted to understand what mindset goes into looking at a platform and being like, how can we best utilize this for whatever purpose? So a lot of people will look at Facebook and say, well, you can't target Fortune 500 companies. Well, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the directors and managers and interns at Fortune 500 companies are all people on Facebook. Why can't you figure out some way to target them, or, you know, use exactly what you do on LinkedIn or whatever, just on Facebook, where it costs you less, slightly harder to do, but if you can figure it out, you've shaved potentially thousands off the cost it'll take to acquire someone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really good point you make. It's like, okay, here's this thing that you don't really think is possible, but then you've invested in yourself and in this mastermind, and it's kind of showing you like, no, it is possible, and here's how you do it. Yeah. And there's all these people out there who think like, oh, everything is free on YouTube, or like all information is free. Why would you ever pay for information? And it's like, you're only ever going to seek out and consume information about things that you already know. And you're never like, things that you don't know are possible. You're not going to go looking for those things because you don't know about them.
100%. I mean, I'll say, so one of the channels that I love, we're still working on getting working, is Snapchat. Now, I didn't know Snapchat was an ad channel until the late great Danilo Lee connected me to it and said like, hey, we're running stuff on this. This is like the frontier that Facebook was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
You get so cheap CPMs and click costs and everything that you can just stumble into money.
Yeah.
That was how it was described. You can stumble into money. And I didn't know about it until he introduced me to it. But I also didn't understand how to use it until I saw him walk through a campaign setup. And then I also ended up buying, and I think it was, guy's name is James or something. He created a course specifically on Snapchat advertising. And I invested in that because I was like, I looked on YouTube. I did exactly what most folks do because I was like, I think it's new. I don't know what's out there.
Yeah.
YouTube. I looked on blogs. No one walked through the setup properly. No one walked through what creative worked. No one walked through like how you have to think about Snapchat as a platform versus Facebook, like how people interact with it differently, how you got to talk to people differently, how you got to call them out differently. But that course and he did in his little mastermind.
Yeah.
That put me like weeks ahead, where we was actually working with someone on a personal loan campaign, and Facebook, lovely as it is, happened to shut us down for personal loans. They didn't like it, at least in Australia.
Yeah.
And so we were able to be like instantly, great, let's move this over to Snapchat, know
Wow.
exactly what to do to set it up.
Sweet.
And at that point, I mean, we were trying to spend $2,000-$3,000 a day. Like, you can't do that very quick unless you're really confident in your setup, knowing the platform.
Yeah, it's like buying experience, and you avoid all the mistakes that would otherwise cost you tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of your life. And you can go spend like $1,000 or a couple $1,000 with a mentor and avoid all of that. And in my mind, it's one of the greatest things you could ever invest in. It's better than the stock market. It's better than real estate.
100%. I love my one of the mentors I absolutely love right now, and I really wish I had learned about him earlier. But he always says, he does this, like, he's been saying it for decades. This is like, now is the time to make money. And he talks about it in Science of Finance, because he's like, this is the lowest interest rate it's ever been in the history of the world. Yeah. Because you look at the history of the world, like history, like the finance sector didn't exist back here.
Yeah.
And yes, the interest rate has been going up, but it's always at relative to the history of the world, the lowest it's ever been. Basically saying, in a different way, now's the time to take action. There's never a better time than now.
Totally.
And it's always awesome to hear. I mean, he's like 75 or something. Dude, 75, still, wakes up at like 5 a.m. and does his thing and all. And it's always crazy to see that level of action. But all of that just comes from learning experiences.
Yeah.
It's taking the shortcut to take, hundreds of years of learning over here.
Yes.
And, what consumer behavior is, what is copywriting, things like that. And condensing it down into, I mean, realistically, what can take you like less than 30 days.
Yeah.
To get at least to maybe not a master level, but enough of a level where you're in the top 10%.
Totally.
Maybe 6 months out, you're in the top 2 to 3%.
Yeah.
I think it's huge.
Easier than it's ever been in the history of the world. Like saying, more opportunity than there's ever been, and easier to get started. And like the path is laid out. And you mentioned mindset a lot too. That's the other thing I think about a lot is like, there are like hundreds of thousands of examples of successful business models out there, and they're well documented. So the tactics of business aren't that hard. It's really like the mindset and the beliefs and thinking appropriately, and like getting guidance and seeing your blind spots. So like having somebody who's had experience saying like, no, you're missing the point here. Like focus here, not there.
100%. I mean, I see this all the time in a lot of like programs people put out there, where they're like, I'm going to give you my business model that you can swipe. And I mean, most of them are dead at this point. They've exploited it to hell, especially in the affiliate space. But I saw that with the one guy I learned Snapchat advertising from. He's like, I'm going to give you the swipe of my $20,000 a day campaign for auto loans. Meanwhile, like Snapchat doesn't even allow that language anymore. It's a dead campaign.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's never been easier to have someone like hand you the keys.
Yeah.
Campaign where they used to spend $20,000 a day.
Yeah.
Most folks' salary every 2 days.
Yeah.
And I mean, they scaled it like crazy.
Yeah.
Like that was unthinkable. Not even like maybe 5 years ago. 5 years ago, that didn't exist.
Yeah.
Like crazy. That stuff in the, like people would go crazy talking about how they spend $100 a day.
Yeah.
5 years ago.
Yeah. It's nuts. So we're pushing on 2 hours. This has been awesome. Loved hearing your story. I want to get, before we shut it down, advice for those just starting out, and then maybe like, where do you see the the future of digital marketing going? Yeah.
This is a loaded question for the last little bit.
Yeah.
Honestly, biggest advice, it's take shortcuts. I mean, if I was, where I was in university now, so, fast forward 5 years and there was all these courses online, I would have got to this point like 5 years later, and I mean, I would have been like kicking myself if I hadn't invested the money that I did spend to this point or more in shortcutting time and effort and everything. I mean, it's one of those things you always think back about. And
Yeah.
my mentor always says, don't, live in regret. It's a waste of time and effort and everything. But I always have that little moment, like every so often before I go to sleep, thinking back, like, what if in those hours I'd waste in university, I'd studied copywriting?
Yeah.
What if I'd studied direct response like Russell Brunson did, or something like that? Like, who knows what could have come? But I mean, even now, I just look at where I came from when I started, like the foundation, very first program I invested in, that was significant.
Yeah.
It was more than learning one little method to make $10 a day. That was a significant investment. I mean, I think when I invested like $12,000, $15,000, it wasn't cheap by any means. It was more than like, it was a tuition cost. And I was like, this can change my life. Let's try it. And I'm super happy I did take that jump, because when I look at where I've gone from there to like now, like, yes, it's been 4 or 5 years, but 4 or 5 years is a short amount of time to go from over here where, I mean, like bluntly, like it was hard to find a job in a tech company that would pay 6 figures.
Yeah.
Like it would have taken me years. Whereas like 2 years after the foundation, I actually did get an offer from IBM to go and work as the first growth hacker at IBM ever. Wow. And that was a nice, like almost 200 grand a year offer.
Yeah, nice.
Like that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't taken that leap and actually like developing performance underneath myself.
Yeah.
And actually caring about what I deliver for folks. But from all the way over here where I couldn't even get like a 6-figure salary to now, like, I mean, a 6-figure agency is just like, it's our side hustle.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, totally. let's be honest. That's kind of how I look at it. That's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Like every time I think back of it, I'm like, imagine if I'd shortcutted another year or like half a year here. And all that just came from investing in getting me from A to B. It was, foundation was pure mindset. I mean, they taught me a lot of other things, but found the mindset was the biggest thing I needed at that point. That mindset got me to take the action and be like, great, let's learn sales. Learning sales took me to, okay, great, copywriting is a big foundation there. Let's circle back to the foundation and relearn the stuff that I skipped over. But from there, it's just been mentors and programs that have brought me a little bit closer to like that tweak and optimization, right? Like, great, real estate agency, the model works, the market wasn't right. And at that point, I even at that point, I invested in another program that got me from 0 to 1 on mortgage.
Yeah.
And that was the first big step that we took in being like, now we have a perfect market. Now we have a perfect offer.
Yeah.
How do we fuse the two? And it's just so, it's funny that it just so happens, like when we obviously started working together, I jumped in the program and like 10 minutes in, I was like, why did I waste all this time in like real estate and the mortgage stuff when like literally what I went through like 3 agencies for is like right in the program.
Yeah.
I was like hitting myself over the head. I was like, oh, I thought I found this thing that was so unique. And then like I went through the webinar and I was like, wait a minute, this sounds really, really familiar.
Yeah.
How much time and effort did we go through to get there? And that, I mean, that, yeah, that's really what it is. It's every step, every course, every, couple $1,000 program. I mean, I bought the small $10, $15 ones, and I bought the really expensive ones, and there's varying degrees of usefulness in each. Definitely the more expensive ones are strategy that go long-term. Smaller ones are tactics that work for a few days to maybe a year.
Yeah.
But every one of those brought me a little bit closer to either doing things faster, doing things better, or just knowing more about something where I can make use of it in the future. And I say that definitely with respect to the mastermind I wake up for in the morning. Like, I don't have the best use case right now, but I know that any one of those skill sets and the way that I'm looking at things now are going to allow me to do something much bigger in the next like 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
I haven't yet uncovered.
When it arises, though, you'll be ready.
100%.
Yeah, ready to go. Yeah, each one gives you a little bit more of an edge, and the accumulation of all of them gives you a massive edge.
100%.
To just destroy everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, just like anybody else, I mean, I started with the $5, $10, $20 ebooks. The foundation was a big jump from those, and it was kind of weird that I took that big leap. But now it is like there's a range that I know where typically the price point in that range is what gets me the curation and quality that I need to move from.
Yeah.
And if I really like, kind of like Snapchat, if it's some source that not many people are using and I really need to know about it, and there's no program or mentor in that space, then I know I can fall back to like a $20 program, $20 ebook or something, and at least get the gist of it.
Yeah, get an overview. Anything to just shortcut it and not have to figure it all out yourself. It's like we were already spending, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars on YouTube ads in WFA, and we wanted to get better at it, and we went out and we bought like 4 or 5 different programs. It's like one is not even enough. It's like I want to see across 5 different programs what the patterns are and what's working, so I don't waste my time. It's like
100%. It's exactly, I mean, yeah, for Snapchat, I basically bought everybody whose program was available and all the little books. In Warrior because I was like, what small tips and tricks are some of these guys doing? But it's just, I mean, that's how you learn if you really want to invest in it.
Yeah. It's one little thing could make a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's like
100%
crazy in this industry. Yeah.
100%.
So future of digital marketing, Facebook app, the media is always talking about, oh man, like a year ago, Facebook's stock was tanking. It was like the biggest drop ever. And I was like, man, I should just load up on Facebook right now because there's no way that their revenues are going to drop after this. They're just going to keep going up. And they absolutely did. I didn't invest, but we spent a lot of money with them. So like
with stocks.
Yeah. But this doom and gloom scenario, things are changing with digital marketing. They are, with privacy laws and tracking and things like that. Future of digital marketing, is it still a good time to get into digital marketing? And do you see things changing in any specific way?
It's always the same answer. There's never been a better time than now.
Yeah.
And the only better time than now is like 10 minutes from now when you've had some time to think about it.
Yeah.
That's really what it always is. I mean, yes, channels will change. And I mean, there have been folks saying this for like good 4 or 5 years. They're always like, oh, channels will change. And they will. Like, Twitter's not as much of a thing as it was. Facebook and Pinterest are much bigger than they were at that point. YouTube and Snapchat are massively bigger than they were at this point. TikTok is a thing. I don't understand at all. Yeah. But I mean, it's a thing now. There's ads on there. And I mean, those will always change and adjust, but the underlying skill set's always the same. Yeah. We kind of we saw that with Snapchat and otherwise. I mean, if we take the base foundations of what we're doing here and move it over to here, yes, there's things that have to change slightly, but generally, if we know the market we're targeting, we understand how to get in touch with them or how to get their attention. Yeah. The rest of it is small technical ramp ups.
Yeah, it's just
like
small
getting more
details.
used to Snapchat's management page than Facebook just takes a little bit of getting used to, a couple hours of getting used to, and you're back up and running.
Totally. Yeah, the fundamentals are everything, and they're transferable, and if you can get those right, everything else will take care of itself.
100%. And I mean, it really is as well. If you look at some folks in the space that are running big offers, like ads on Facebook that generate tens of thousands of dollars a day in revenue, they don't ditch the foundations. All of them are using the foundations of direct response copywriting. They're all using, I mean, I guess it really is just all basics of direct response copywriting, which is knowing your market, having some form of call to action and attention grabber, which now is just with images and videos rather than just pure text.
Yeah.
And they make sure that that front end thing, which is the ad, qualifies the next step. And it's all about the next logical step. The ad is used to get them to take action on page one. Page one is used to get them to take action on page two, and so on and so on and so on. And as long as they follow those principles, they're all the same.
Totally. It's not that complicated. It's just market to message match. And if you can like nail that, then everything else is pretty easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So this has been awesome to hear your story. It's unbelievable how much you've participated in. I don't even think people are going to get a real idea because we didn't even talk about a lot of the stuff that you're working on now.
We skipped a lot of things in between and a lot of things right now.
And a lot of things for the future that you have in the works. So, but I hope this was useful to everyone and you kind of see what a journey looks like from a high level. And also, if you want to take advantage of Jamil's expertise and experience rather than having to go through it yourself, come join us at WFA. And if you want to work hands-on every single week and get live help with your campaigns, come check out the lab if it's still open. Any parting words that you want to leave people with, or can they learn more about you in any specific place that you'd like them to go take a look?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you just want to pick my brain and ask questions, I mean, come and join the lab and just grab a one-on-one call with me and hang out and let's talk. But I mean, I guess the biggest parting words is really, look at the time and effort and energy and money and everything you invest in yourself as an investment. It's never a wasted dollar, whether you get a great success with it off the bat or you don't. You'll always circle back to leveraging that at some point in your life. I never thought I was going to do crazy with sales, and I hated sales and everything. But going through that consulting, coaching, sales process just made it really easy for me to jump on calls like this, where before I was terrified.
Yeah.
I would have made every excuse in the book to not jump on a call like this with one person to talk.
Yeah.
I would have gone ahead and like broken my foot or something to get out of it.
Yeah.
But that's just, it's a skill set. It's an investment I made to be like, okay, let's get myself out of this so I can take action on the next step. And that's honestly the biggest thing. That, and there's never a better time than right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Wise words from a wise man. So we'll wrap it up since we're at time. But let's do a follow-up interview in the future. Thanks so much for taking the time, Jamil. And we'll see you all inside WFA in the lab.